Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing Ivy Noelle Weir, writer, and Kelly Williams, artist. They are the creative team of Bountiful Gardens from Mad Cave Studios. Issue 1 and 2 are out in stores. Matter of fact, I think issue 2 came out a couple of weeks ago, I think, if I remember correctly. Issue 3 comes out on November 17th, and the diamond code for that is SEP as in Paul 211631. So, Ivy and Kelly, how are you guys doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. Kelly, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you guys. Now, before we start getting into the interview, I really want to thank Ivy and Kelly for their patience. We were supposed to have done this interview at the beginning of August, and at the time there was like a technical glitch, and the technical glitch was me because day of that interview, I hit the wrong button on my computer. So yeah, that's why, yeah. But here we are. So, again, Ivy and Kelly, mahalo, thank you in Hawaiian for all your patience and putting up with me, bugging you to do this interview. So thank you very much.
Of course.
It is not a problem.
No, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go over, Ivy, I'm going to go over a little bit of your background history. So Ivy, correct me if I'm wrong, are you a librarian? Is that correct?
I am. I'm a librarian by training.
Okay.
I have my master's in library science, and that's what I do for my day job.
Oh, okay. That is pretty cool. Because at one point I was toying around with becoming a librarian, and then when I found out I needed my master's, I said, "Oh, forget that." At that time, I was very young and stupid. I should have done that. I should have gone for my master's in librarian. Okay. And then also recently, you wrote a short story in Deadbeats Volume 1. Now, Deadbeats is a music horror anthology from a Wave Blue world. And the story that you wrote in there is Beyond Her Years. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, I did that with Steens, who I also did archival quality with. So it was cool to get to do another story together.
That's pretty cool. That's a nice segue because your next work that you did was Archival Qualities from Oni Press. And then in 2019, you won the Dwayne McDuffie Award for Diversity in Comics. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. That's been like the honor of my career thus far. It's been pretty cool.
Nice. You also have done work, your other works were Princeless, Girls Rock from Action Lab. And then you've won a couple of awards, the 2019 Publisher Weekly Star Watch honoree, and in 2015, the American Library Association Emerging Leaders. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
okay.
It makes me sound impressive, but yeah, that's all correct.
No, but it's just to give the listeners a little bit of background too for you guys. And then Kelly, I'm going to go over your background. And like I said, correct me if I'm wrong too. Now again, Kelly, you have actually, and it just came out, Deadbeats London Calling. You did a short story. It's called The Plot Against Thanksgiving. You've done the artwork, and the writer was, it is William Messner-Loebs, correct?
That is correct, yes.
That's pretty awesome because I remember, now correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember, I'm going to be honest, I was kind of a bad comic book fan. I don't remember reading any of his works, but he did he do work on Wonder Woman and Thor? I can't remember. I know he
I think so. He's done a ton of like Marvel and DC stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was pretty awesome to get to draw a story. It's not like we were working together.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. And then also too, your other works include A Letter to Joe, and that's a historical military romance drama from Top Shelf.
That is correct.
This Nightmare Kills Fascists, and it's a horror anthology from a Wave Blue world. And you also did the cabinet from Source Point Press. And that matter of fact, I think that's probably out in trade. I got to pick that up because that sounds pretty cool.
It is. Yeah. It was just a graphic novel. But yeah, we did it on Kickstarter, and a couple of years later, Source Point picked it up.
Oh, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I've got to check that out. And also, you did Metaphase from Alterna Comics, and you also have done work for Eerie and Creepy. Did I miss any between Ivy and Kelly? Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
I have a lot of work, so
Did anything else you want to add or anything, Kelly?
Oh no, you're good.
Okay.
You hit the good stuff.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Now we're slowly getting to the interview, but before we really dive into the interview, I want to give a big shout out to Allison Marie Pond, the marketing director of Mad Cave Studios, for help setting up this interview and providing me an advanced copy of Bountiful Garden. And also too, I also want to say, Ivy, thank you very much for reaching out. I through your website, I sent an email to you, a contact email, and it was really nice of you to respond back going, hey, yes, let's do an interview. Let's include Kelly too. So thank you very much.
Yeah, totally.
Of
course.
Because that was pretty cool. Just thank you very much. Okay. Now, where can listeners follow you on social media? Ivy, I'll let you go first.
I'm on pretty much every platform at Ivy Noelle, IvyNoelle, or my website is ivynoelleweir.com. It's all pretty straightforward for me.
All right. And then Kelly?
Pretty much the same. I'm on most of your social media stuff. And it's mostly at Treebeard, which is TREEBEERD. And add a Y to that on Instagram, Street Beardy. And my website is Treebeard Stuff. So
now, Kelly, I want to ask you your Twitter handle, all right? Or it says Nacho Man Sandy Carriage. Where did that come from?
It's I just made a really stupid joke to my wife, who loves me, but she can only handle so much a day. So but I was horribly entertained at myself and was like, I'm gonna change my name to that on Twitter, and I did, and it I don't know, it's kind of just stuck. I almost feel like I can't change it now.
And then one more thing I want to add, your profile picture, the hot dog costume.
Yeah. I was at a hot dog place in St. Louis, and they had hot dog costumes just hanging, on coat racks. I just asked if I could put it on, and I feel like the point was so like maybe kids could take pictures dressed like hot. I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I put it on, and I got a picture of me eating a hot dog, a veggie dog.
Okay.
Just so we're clear.
All right.
But yeah.
Now I'm gonna add one more. I'm sorry, I forgot to write this down, but now I follow you on Twitter. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you buy your own hot dog costume within the last 2 months?
That is correct. I indeed bought it. I realized, I'm gonna start doing conventions again soon, and this whole thing kind of came to be. I started using that picture for everything, in the middle of the pandemic and everything. So I thought it might be, nobody's going to recognize me if I'm not dressed like a hot dog. So.
That's your brand now.
I'm very good at branding myself with things that I kind of just get stuck with.
Uh-huh. That's pretty awesome. Um, Later, when we're starting to wrap things up, I'll ask you about your convention appearance, and I definitely ask if you're going to be wearing a hot dog costume, your hot dog, or cosplay as a veggie dog, I should say.
Yeah, I'm made of meat, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna start this question. Where did you guys grow up? So I'm gonna start with you, Kelly. I'm gonna start with you first.
Oh, well, I guess this is admitting this is a new thing for me. So I guess I largely grew up in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
I moved here when I was pretty young, and I moved, in and out a few times, but I probably spent the largest portion of my time growing up in Arkansas, which is as awful as it sounds.
Ivy, where did you grow up?
I'm from Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
I grew up outside Philadelphia, so, and that is largely where I have remained. I live in Boston now, but we're moving back to Philadelphia, so there's no escape.
All right, and then Ivy, I'm gonna start with you first. What was or were your first comics that you read?
So I was really lucky because I had a parent who was really into comics. My mom was super into comics, and she made her own comics, and she was fairly involved in the DIY comic scene in Philly. So I grew up, like, obviously I also read like the Archie Double Digest and stuff from the grocery store, and I really liked them. But she was also giving me like Love and Rockets and the more Beset Swamp Thing and like Claremont era X-Men. So those are the ones I remember reading when I was really young and really liking.
Oh, okay. And then Kelly, what about you? What was your first, or what were your first comics that you read?
Largely for me, it was the first one that really impacted me, I guess, would be like Swamp Thing, the Wrights and Ween stuff, and like but also like Tales from the Crypt and Bountiful and stuff, like EC comic reprints and stuff, like the things that, like, I'd go to the grocery store and they'd actually have them on the magazine stands and stuff, and like I had read some superhero comics like off and on and all that, but it was the horror stuff that I really got into. And then later I really got into, just one day I just really got into like the X-Men and like Daredevil or something, and like so those are the ones that I remember as being like my first comics.
Now this is kind of off the cuff here, so because Kelly, now correct me if I'm wrong, you started to read the Ween, Wrightson Swamp Thing. Ivy, you started to read the Alan Moore Swamp Thing. Have you guys like talked about the differences from the 70s and 80s Swamp Thing?
Nope.
I think for my mom, she really liked the art in like the 80s Swamp Thing and like the very like kind of trippy aspect to it. So that was what she was giving us.
Because I know it was, I remember reading at least a couple issues of the Alan Moore Swamp Thing. It was a little interesting.
It's very weird. It's super wacky. Weird. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily like appropriate for a 7-year-old to be reading, but I was.
But if I remember correctly, back then they still had the comic code, and I don't think the 80s Swamp Thing went to I think there was still a period that was being sold on the racks. It didn't go to Vertigo yet, if I remember correctly, unless she gave you the Vertigo stuff.
Who knows?
Still DC then, I think.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was still
DC, I
DC
think.
during
Yeah,
that
still
time.
okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, but Kelly, going back to the Rights in Swamp Thing, I still remember that one issue with the Patchwork Man. I still love that hand with the head on top. Though that was the creepiest ones. Those are so creepy. I love those.
It's great.
Yeah.
And it was Wrightson that I like is the reason why I was into Swamp Thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I think I only ever had like 2 issues of the Wrightson stuff, like when I was a kid. But I mean, you know, I probably read them like a million times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, now Drew, the co-host for Comics for Fun and Profit, he submitted this question. Do you guys remember what your first LCS was?
I do. So it was a store so I spent part of my childhood in Wilmington, Delaware, which is
Mm-hmm.
where my dad owned a restaurant. And so there was a store called Between Books. And it was like one of those great book and comic stores where you kind of feel like if you touch something, everything's going to fall over. It was just like piles and piles and piles of like
Mm-hmm.
books and used books, new books. But the proprietor, Greg, he was a friend of my mom's. He was super nice, and he like was really into giving me and my brother comics and letting us read and hang out in the store. And so I'll always remember Between Books because it's really the place where I got started on this path.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Kelly, what about you?
Mine was a place called Books Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in the same town I'm in now. They kind of very much the same type of, you know, it felt like if you moved wrong, the whole place was going to fall down.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But and they sold like they did video rentals as well, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually they added like antique books and old leather-bound stuff, and they the owner was a very strange fella,
Mm-hmm.
and he well, eventually I ended up working at this comic shop, and
Mm-hmm.
like that all pretty much came to an end. The store closed after he was went to prison for murdering his girlfriend and lawyer. It's a little crazy, but
Yeah.
so but the manager, the person who I worked with, she actually owns the current comic shop here in town, Arkham Comics.
Okay.
So I essentially still go to the same comic shop.
Okay. That I've got to say that's a very interesting story about you. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I want to bring it up just because I feel like then I need to explain it. You know, I don't want to eat up all the time. It's a wacky story.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because yes, it is. It is. I'm not being sarcastic, but seriously, Kelly, thank you for sharing that. It's yeah, it's just that's pretty wild, you know, but it's pretty cool. But I'm going to say, but I'm off the cuff here because since you mentioned that you worked in a comic shop, how was that experience like, if you don't mind? I mean, not besides the strangeness and
Well, yeah.
you know.
I mean, it was great. I was a teenager, you know, and I mean, it was like in the middle of the 90s comics boom.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, it was great to just be in that and everything. Yeah. And also, I suppose like I remember some aspects of 90s comics different than people who maybe were just fans that didn't have to deal with the when things changed and when things got a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But like I worked there for a few years, like just for my books. Like I just go in and help out and get my comics. But like eventually, like took over the management for a little while. And yeah, I mean, there's times where I kind of wish I still did it, just because, I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of cool working in a comic shop.
it is. Yeah, it sounds like
Especially
it.
if you're calling the shots and stuff. So,
Yeah. And then Ivy, I know that you have worked in a comic shop too. Is that correct?
Yes, I did as well.
And then can you like, how was that experience? Was it fun? Was it pretty cool?
Yeah. So I worked in a comic book store for about 2 years, right when I got out of college, and it opened a lot of doors for me. I met people who are still my closest friends. Steens, our editor on this book, I met because we both belonged to an online group for comic book retailers. I met my husband because I booked the events for the store, and he was a nerdcore rapper who was coming through and needed a place to play. So it changed my life.
Uh-huh.
I guess I'm being totally honest. But as like a comic book reader, it was cool because I would read all the new issues, and there's a sense of community you build up with your Wednesday regulars where you I have also worked as a barista, and it felt very similar. Like I would know everybody, and I would know like, okay, well, this is like their preference, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, if you like this, you should try this. And
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's pretty cool. But so Ivy and Ken, like I said, I'm not being sarcastic, but it's so cool that, it's just so cool to hear your guys' takes on working at the comic store. It is. It's pretty nice. It really is. Now, Ivy, you already touched upon, I'm going to start off with you on this. How did your journey begin breaking into comics?
so it's very roundabout. I went to college for fine art, nothing to do with drawing, which is why I can't draw at all. Photography major. um, and then I'd always liked writing, and the longer I was in art school, the more I was writing criticism, and it seemed like for a while I was going to be an art critic. Like that was the path I was on, was to work in art criticism or to work in an art gallery, or really the path I was on was to be the person who helps rich people buy art for their house. Which I guess I'm really glad I'm not doing, because it sounds like it'd be pretty miserable. But I left school, and I was so burnt out on the New York art world that I decided I wanted to like write something that had nothing to do with what I was doing. And so I I had always written fiction. It had always kind of been my dream to be a fiction writer. And I started working on this story that was a novel, and I was working at the comic book shop at the time. And I met Steens, and I saw their art, and I was like, I really love this person's art, and I really love comics. And I wonder if they want to do a comic with me. So I basically reached out to Steens and was like, hey, I have this idea. I've been working on it as a novel, and I would like to talk to you about perhaps if you would like to work on it as a comic with me, this guy. So thankfully they said yes. And we started working on what was supposed to be a web comic. And then Oni Press opened up they were doing a period where they were taking unagented submissions. And we were like, oh, well, we've got all this stuff done. We should just send it in. Kind of figured nothing would happen. But then they bought it. So that was pretty much how I got started. It's like, it doesn't really, when you break in with writing, they're like, it never happens on the first try. And so we were like, we'll just have a webcomic for a while and get used to it. And then next thing you know, we're doing a 256-page graphic novel. This is done before. But that's what kind of opened the door and got me working. And then I found that I really loved, because I think I was a photography major and because I was so used to thinking visually, comics as a writer was something that was really exciting to me, because I was like, this is great. This is like thinking visually and writing and working collaboratively, and just every part of it was something that resonated with me and that I loved. So I've stuck with it now for about I don't know, 7 years.
Mm-hmm. And then Kelly, what about you? How did you break into comics?
I like always, like for a very long time, been doing like mini comics and zines, just Xerox stuff is like how I started. So like when I was working at the comic shop, I started making comics, and that was a long time ago. Like I was like, I think my first one was like 14 or 15, something like that, and I just did that for a very long time, and then we I met my wife. We had a kid when we were incredibly young. So my ambitions of drawing comics or whatever kind of went off for on a vacation for a few years, and but then later, I came back around and started doing it again, and I got laid off from my job because they got bought out and closed down. And I had just finished like my first graphic novel, which was The Cabinet. And, we had the Kickstarter went well and everything. So we talked about it and decided, well, there's probably no better time than now because I'm already in my, late 30s. So, and our daughter graduated high school. So there was a little less things to worry about in that sense. So I kind of just went full in at that point. And that was about 10 years ago almost, I think. And I've just been doing it full time since then.
That's pretty cool. That's really nice.
It is neat.
So Kelly, now correct me if I'm wrong, was The Cabinet like your first paid professional job? Or was there anything else?
Well, no, because it. Me and my buddy Christian Sager, who wrote it, we just decided. He asked if I wanted to do this. We did, and we worked out like a thing. Like with he would run the Kickstarter, and I at this point I think this was like the first I had even heard of Kickstarter, and like. I don't remember. I think I took like $30 a page or something. But like it was my first like what felt like a professional like job and stuff, and the quality of it and everything. Like my first I guess quote unquote pro like type gig was actually Erie. I drew a story written by Justin Jordan in an issue at Erie. And then, that was the first thing I did that was like for a publisher, like work for hire kind of thing. And I was like, that felt like starting at the top of the tower. So I was like, I don't really know what to do now because this is like the thing I felt like you aspire to get to.
I'm going to ask you, how cool was it to see your name on that Erie issue?
It was very cool. It was incredibly cool. I think about it a little bit now, and I think about how, I'm just a grumpy person, and like, the industry in general makes me grumpy, but I still love comics and I still love doing it. And like, and I think I went through a little time period where I was like, I don't care about that so much, But recently, I just recently moved, and I found, I didn't think I had any copies of that left, and I found a couple, and it was kind of cool, like looking at it again and being like, this is rad, this is like, it's Erie. Like, that's super cool,
And then Ivy, what was your first paid professional job in comics?
Well, I mean, we were paid something for archival quality. We were paid in advance, and I received royalties on that. But as far as like a work for hire type of thing, it's actually probably The Secret Garden.
Oh, okay.
Because between archival quality and that, I
Mm-hmm.
was just doing like a couple of little anthology things, so
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't doing any kind of work for hire. So yeah, but it feels like that's very recent, but I actually like signed that contract over 2 years ago, so
Mm-hmm.
it's actually, a while ago.
Yeah. But yeah. Um, how cool was it to see your name on something? And
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So archival quality, the month archival quality was published, there was a devastating fire in our apartment building, and my now husband and I had to evacuate, and they thought that we were never going to be able to go back in and get our stuff because the building was structurally unsound.
Yeah.
We were living with a friend, and I was supposed to go to Emerald City Comic Con
Yeah.
like the week after this
Oh
happened
my God.
to
Mm-hmm.
promote archival quality.
Yes.
So I remember that. So we were staying like 30 miles from where our apartment was with friends.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the week it came out, I was like, can we go to like a Barnes and Noble and just like see if they have it? And
Yeah.
we went in and it was there. And I was like, okay, everything is garbage right now. But
Yeah.
like seeing my book in a Barnes and Noble is like kind of insane and is sort of undoing the fact that I don't know if I'm ever going to go home again. We did eventually
Oh no.
go
Yeah.
home.
But it's just kind of like it's just to have that little. It's like that little sunshine in the darkness. Yeah.
Yeah. The timing actually, I thought it was bad timing, but I think the timing couldn't have been more perfect, actually.
Yeah, that's kind of perfect timing, actually.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry about what happened. I mean,
No.
it was years ago, but I was like, I'm just sorry.
Yeah, and then later it turned out to be an arson. It was wild.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right, I am joking on this part. Kelly and Ivy, I'm joking. Please don't take this wrong way. Okay, so listeners, this is a comic book podcast. This is not a crime podcast about murder or arson.
That's true. Oh my God. Man.
It could be.
Yeah.
We could pivot.
Yeah, we could. But no, I'm going to stick to the game plan. Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask, how did you guys meet? And how long have you guys known each other? Ivy, I'm going to start off with you first. Or Kelly, you want to start?
Ivy can go.
Yeah, I mean, we were put together by Mad Cave.
Mm-hmm.
And until that point, I did not know Kelly other than knowing of him on Twitter as Nacho Man Sandy Cabbage. In fact, when Steens was like, the artist on this book is going to be Kelly Williams, I was like, who? And she was like, this person. And I was like, oh, Nacho Man Sandy Cabbage. This stuff is really cool. So
I'm real good at branding.
I was like, oh, I know his stuff. So yeah, we got put together by Mad Cave for this. So they reached out to me, and at that point, I think that they had already actually gotten Kelly on board. I think I was brought on after.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Kelly, I'll ask you the follow-up question. How long have you guys known each other? Because since Mad Cave put you guys together, because I like, when did they put you guys together, team you guys up?
Well, I guess. Well, I guess it's probably been almost 2 years now. Is that right?
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we Mad Cave.
Mad Cave.
They brought us together.
All right. This next question, whoever wants to answer this. Okay, so what is the premise, for our listeners, what is the premise of Bountiful Garden?
I've got my elevator pitch for this has gotten pretty good at this point.
Okay.
I think I've had to pivot because I had another book come out. But So, Bountiful Guardian follows a teenage crew of scientists who are on a terraforming mission.
Mm-hmm.
They are stopped mysteriously and awoken from cryosleep 10 years early, and they don't know what stalled their ship, but they find themselves stuck over an alien planet that's not on any of their maps.
Mm-hmm.
So, they have to split the crew, half go to the planet to try and figure out what stalled them, and half stay on board to determine how to fix the ship. But
Mm-hmm.
both find that something far more sinister is
Mm-hmm.
lurking in the darkness.
Kelly, I'm going to ask, do you want to add anything to that?
No.
All right.
I am not a very good salesman.
No. Okay. And then I'm going to ask, like, how did this story come about? I know, like you said, Mad Cave just threw you guys together, but how did the story come out? And Kelly, I'm going to start with you first because I know Ivy said that kind of like Mad Cave brought you on first. Is that correct?
Yeah. They reached out to me, which I was a little surprised when they first started talking to me about it, and I was like, who's writing? And they were like, oh, I don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh. But it was only like a couple, I think it was just like a week or two after that they told me it would be Ivy. But yeah, they reached out to me, and then they put me with Steens, and like that's it really. I mean, they gave us this like bare minimum kind of like, this is the overall gist of what we want to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of just said, so do this with that and get us to this, and then that's where Ivy came in and like very professionally got them to where they wanted to be with it.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird though, because it was the first time I've personally ever worked like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like where like I'm like, yeah, let's do it, based on them going, okay, so like, they're kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in space.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yeah.
That was basically it. It was maybe like a 2-sentence prompt. And in fact, when Steens first approached me, they were sort of like, I think you'd be a good fit for this thing. I'll try to get you more information. It's like kids in space. I was like, oh, okay. So, yeah, it was a very loose prompt, and we got to build it, which was cool because even though it was a work for hire gig, it feels more creator owned to me because we got to do so much of the developmental work. So
Mm-hmm.
I was very invested in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm just going to jump around a little bit because Ivy, I'm going to ask you, because I read issue 2, I read the back matter. I'm not gonna spoil it for the I'd rather have the listeners read it. But I want to ask, what novels or short stories inspired you to take this 2-sentence idea and run with it?
So yeah, I've talked a lot when we've talked about this about Bradbury's The Long Rain,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yes.
was one of the primary things that I thought of. And really like a lot of sci-fi from that era was really formative to this. And then also thinking about like mythos fiction,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a really interesting opportunity to kind of reclaim mythos fiction from its fairly racist origins and like, make cool cosmic horror.
Yes.
I thought about like Robert W. Chambers and, like Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard and all these like kind of pulpy era
Mm-hmm.
Writers who are doing sort of like, cosmic horror. Back when you could make horror be like, there's something and it's just really big.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of all you had to do. Like you didn't really even have to describe it. I mean, Lovecraft had an entire story that was just about a color that people saw that was like, well, It's too much.
Was
So
oh, no, correct me if I'm wrong. Was that Nicolas Cage movie, The Color of Space?
Color Out of Space. I didn't see the movie actually. I've been recommended it a bunch of times.
It's good.
Really? Okay.
I want to
Because
see it.
like
That's
I'm
it.
like, how could you adapt this into like a movie? But you know, I mean, it was definitely an era where you could make like the thing that's scary be sort of big and vague and unknowable. And I really liked that concept for
Mhm.
this because I think that if it had come down to like it's teens fighting aliens,
Mhm.
that like I would have been like, this is fun, but I don't think I'm doing anything like that interesting with it. And then knowing Kelly's artwork
Mhm.
before we started working, I was like, I feel like this dude could run with something big and weird and unknowable, which he did.
Yes.
So it worked out well.
So, um, Kelly, I'm going to ask you, um, what visual mediums inspired you to tell this story?
There's, I think most of it's pretty, like, on the surface, obvious type stuff, like Alien.
Yeah.
Event Horizon was
Yeah.
something that I thought about a lot, and like the Dead Space games, like were like the main kind of things that came to mind when I first started thinking about it. And I also like I kind of feel like uh, whether this is a good way to think about it or not, I'm not sure. But like I feel like sometimes things are like overly complicated for the sake of being overly complicated with uh like how they're drawn and stuff like that. So like I I wanted to like keep it simple, but I also wanted it to be dirty. Like I hate that about like a lot of sci-fi and everything's clean and antiseptic and just like
Yeah.
perfect. And I'm like, you know, it shouldn't be like this is a scenario in which I feel like it shouldn't be, because I mean, you're spending years on this ship
Mhm.
that's like, for all intent and purposes, lost in space,
Yes.
and ends up at a planet that, like, I mean, I guess that was part of my thinking, is I didn't want to have like the expected contrast of like, here's this sleek shiny ship,
Mhm.
and then down on the ground it's all craggy and ragged, and
Mhm.
and you just have those like two separate worlds. Like
Yes.
I felt like I wanted the ship to kind of have the same, I guess, atmospheric
Mhm.
kind of like vibe to it a little bit. So, you know, like I said, most of the influences are, and I mean, I think that goes across the board, like visually and just like in the story itself and everything.
Mhm.
A lot of the influence are like on the surface. Like I don't think there's any kind of super trying to be clever and hide it. Like I think we very much wanted it like out there when we were making it.
Yeah. I just want to comment because I read the first two issues. Kelly, I love the opening page on issue 1. Just the panels, like the first panel, I think there's nothing. You see the words. Second panel, you see these like vine or tendrils start slowly creeping on. And by the third panel, it's growing thicker and thicker. I just love it.
Thank you.
And the world, and then like how you talk about the Jemison, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Jemison spaceship, is that the name of the spaceship?
Yep.
So to me, it looks like a cross. Actually, it looks like a cross between the Sulaco from Aliens and a little bit of the ship from Event Horizon. I could be wrong on that. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And then Kelly, the other thing I love about your art too is that the world looks lived in. It's like you said, and it just looks lived in. It looks dirty. It looks gritty. um, and then I'm going to lead to this next question is, do you guys want to give a shout out to anyone else on your creative team?
Well, everybody?
Yeah, everyone killed it.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to who is your colorist, the letterers, and who
the colorist, Giorgio Spalletta, I think is how you say his last name. This book for me was somewhat new experience in that usually I color myself, and a lot of times I do watercolor for all of the even the interior stuff. But so I mean, I've worked with colorists before, and because I do ink washes, the gray tones and all of that, sometimes somebody may be an amazing colorist, but sometimes you may not just jive well. The styles don't mix well and stuff. So I'm always a little nervous about that. But when Giorgio came on and I saw his first test pages, I was like, okay, this is perfect, because he kept it simple, but he did a good job. He did an amazing job, actually, working with all the gray washes and everything, and just kind of bringing that feel for it. In fact, a real testament to his how good the work he did on it is I've seen people talk about the coloring more than I've seen them talk about anything else. And I even remember specifically seeing somebody in a video talking about how it was watercolor. The book is actually done in watercolor, which it's not. But he did such a good job working with what I put on the page that it sold that look for people, and I mean that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then Ivy, I'm going to ask, do you want to give? Oh, sorry. Did you want to add anything, Ivy? Sorry.
Oh, no, Georgia did an amazing job. And then I was going to also shout out our letterer, Justin Birch. As a writer, when you write comics, you are working in tandem with the letterer, and you have to set them up. And then I feel like Justin just really ran with it. I gave a lot of notes in the script about this is loud, or this is quiet, or this this person is in having some kind of cognitive dissonance, and you really played with the letter form a lot in it, especially for sort of the creepy cosmic detached voices in a way that I thought was super cool. It was really a great team experience, and then Steen's, our editor, is just a phenomenal project manager. So
the best.
You project manage everything I worked on, but it was everybody, I feel brought their A game. There was no part where I was this is every new thing that came in that I saw, I was this is awesome. There was never a moment where I didn't think everybody was not firing at all cylinders.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm going to start slowly wrapping things up. One more question I want to ask about the book actually is, and it's for both you guys. I'm just asking, why did you guys use teenagers as the space crew for this mission? I know in issue 2, Marnie, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, kind of gave a little blurb of why. But can I ask, why did you guys use teenagers as a space crew?
So that was part of the 2-sentence prompt that we got.
Sorry.
But
they told us
the
to.
We couldn't not. To be fair, it was just said young people. I think that actually originally they were supposed to actually maybe be slightly younger, and I was nah, teens. I don't know if I'm good with sending kids off to die in space. But The other thing that I thought was cool, though, once I was working within the prompt, and part of why I was excited about the prompt is I think that, teenagers are really emotionally volatile.
Mhm.
And I think that when you're in a situation, a sort of, the thing-esque trapped together situation, you have to count on somebody being rational and reasonable. And with
Yes.
teenagers, it's just like, it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
So, I it gave me a lot to play with as a writer, sort of like, their emotional volatility and their insecurity. And,
Mhm.
when you're that age, like, this, you're a raw nerve, and then
Mhm.
this horrible thing is happening to them on top of it. So, it ended up, I think, I can't imagine the book with adults
Mhm.
anymore.
Mhm.
Um, like, I feel like it works well with them as kids, but it's also like they are, these like super geniuses who have basically been trained since birth to go and do this. So, there's an interesting play between like them having to kind of assume adulthood but still be kids, and they're scared.
Mhm. That's a very good. I didn't realize that that they're kind of like pushed into this adult role.
Hmm.
Because I love
I
the
also
art.
like the practical idea of there being sent like light years like away and to start something for a new civilization and stuff, and
Oh,
the idea that they're part of the reasoning for sending kids could be that, I mean, you got to get them out there young, or else you don't want a bunch of 70-year-olds showing up to
Yeah.
yeah,
start
yeah,
terraforming and stuff. So
that's right. Because I mean, it's not a spoiler in the first issue, but their sleeping pods activate, and one of them said, "How come we're up? We're supposed to be still 10 years in stasis." So that means they would be like in their early 20s or mid 20s when they're supposed to reach their new civilization or new world to start something. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, okay. I'm gonna ask before I start wrapping things up. Do you guys want to add anything else regarding Bountiful Garden?
No, I mean, this is a good conversation. I don't feel I have anything else to add.
go buy it. That's all I got.
Yeah, yeah, I should say that. Do continue to read it and buy the trade when it comes out.
Okay. Now, if you guys can talk about it, what new projects do you guys have coming out? Ivy, I'm going to start with you because I think one of your projects is already out already, correct?
Yeah, so in sharp contrast to my scary story about teenagers in space, I also write very pleasant YA middle grade graphic novels. One of which released this week. Secret Garden on 81st Street came out on Tuesday, like pretty much a week ago, with Little Brown for young readers, and I'm doing another one with them that comes out in March of 2022, which is Anne of West Philly, which is a retelling of Anne of Green Gables. I think that's. I did some essays for a book from Crunchyroll that's coming out next year. That was really fun. I wrote 2 essays for the Crunchyroll Book of Essential Anime. I got to do the one on Sailor Moon, and I was obsessed with Sailor Moon
Mhm.
as youth. And I'm gonna say that like I'm not still, and I'm not looking at a bunch of Sailor Moon figures directly to the right of my computer. So it's pretty cool to get to write like the essay on Sailor Moon.
Real quickly before I move on to Kelly about if he has any upcoming projects, I'm just going to ask this funny off the wall question. Any crossover between Bountiful Gardens and the Secret Garden in the future?
This was just like a really weird coincidence that they came out at the same time. In fact, they were originally supposed to have the same pub date, and I'm really glad that one of them moved.
So I'm going to say, was both of them supposed to come out on September 8th?
They were both supposed to come out in September. Originally, Bountiful Garden was supposed to come out on the 28th, and Secret Garden was supposed to come out on the 28th. Bountiful Garden moved up, Secret Garden moved out,
Oh,
which I was really glad for, because I was like, I don't know how to promote two titles that come out on the same day with really similar names.
all right, Kelly, I'm going to ask, do you have any upcoming projects that you can talk about?
Hey, I do. I'm working on finishing up a series, another 5-issue series with Joe Sorecki, the writer from A Letter to Joe. We're doing a story that's sort of a modern take on Don Quixote. It's called I have to read it because I can never remember. The Life and Death of the Brave Captain Suave. It'll be coming out from Scout first part of next year. Like, I'm almost wrapping it up. There's some other stuff, but I honestly have no idea if I'm supposed to talk about it or not. So.
Yeah.
Publishing.
Yeah.
You never know.
Okay. Couple fun questions. Whoever wants to start off first, favorite convention moment, either as a fan or as a creator.
So I think mine is Emerald City Comic Con 2018. I think it might have been 2018. I was walking through Artist Alley, and Jaime Hernandez was behind his table with like no line. And like I said, I grew up reading Love and Rockets, and I was a huge Love and Rockets fan. He's also like possibly my favorite comic book artist of all time. And I was like, oh my God, I grew up reading your books, and like I'm a huge fan. Like, it's very rare that I really dork out at somebody like that, but I was like, I'm very flustered. And he indicated that it made him feel old that I, a 30 something, was saying I grew up reading his books, and then did a sketch for me of Hopi. Just like sketched off a Hopi for me really quickly, and I still have it. And I was like, this is incredible. This is like, I can't believe this is real life.
But that's pretty cool.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool that you got him at the right time. Like you said, there's no line.
There's like nobody there. He's just like sitting there, and I was like, what?
Kelly, what about you?
Oh, I don't know. I think I kneecap myself on that stuff because I don't talk to people, and I'm very self-conscious about going up to people I'm a fan of and being like, hey, I'm a fan, like, I feel like if I don't have something to say, I'm super uncomfortable, and I just don't. And I regret that sometimes. Like, I had multiple opportunities to meet Bernie Wrightson and chickened out every single time. And the closest I ever came to talking or being, in that position with him was we were eating breakfast like in the hotel, like at Heroes. And like we were talking about Wrightson being there. And then I all of a sudden realized like he was sitting like directly behind me, like with his back to me.
Yeah.
And I got super self-conscious like after I realized that. And I don't think I said like another word like the entire time we were there. And it's so weird. Like I have no idea why I'm that bad about it, but I am. So that's kind of, I don't really ever think about it that way. That might be my best experience, just because if anything, I learned that I am horribly like that.
But he came but at least you're close to him. You know, I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. It sucks because, like, you know, he's supposed to be, like, one of the nicest people, like, on the planet.
I've heard.
And
yeah.
I'm just like, I don't think I'm going to talk to him.
Okay. So, Kelly, I'm going to start off with you. Next convention appearance.
Well, my next one actually is most likely going to be Air Capital Comic Con in Wichita, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
It's a smaller show, and I'm friends with the people that run it, so I kind of do it every year. And since they're doing it this year, I'm kind of treating it as my building up my confidence before doing C2E2 in December.
Oh.
So
yeah.
Those are my next shows.
So the one in Wichita, what dates are those, if you don't mind? What dates are that convention you're going to?
Oh yeah, I know. I just I don't know.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's in November. I can't remember the exact dates. I want to say in the 20s somewhere, like the middle of the month.
All right. But the important question, are you going to cosplay as a hot dog?
Most likely, yes.
Okay.
I will probably wear it on the plane and the rest of the time.
Ivy, what is your next convention appearance?
I don't have any planned. I wasn't vibing with it during the panorama.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't hop on any of the like read shows that are happening across the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But I suspect I will be back at it in 2022.
Yeah.
Provided that things don't take another weird catastrophic turn that we don't expect.
Right. I should say that I'm only doing them as long as things look okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
I'm very conscious of this stuff, and if it looks like it's going a bad way leading into it, it won't take much to make me go, nope, no thank you. I'm fine.
And I've been pretty privileged in that, like, I have my like librarianing day job, so I don't have the same, like, for folks who are full-time artists, this year's been brutal, and so, like, I don't judge anybody for doing them. I just was like, I'm gonna pass this.
Yeah,
this year.
right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Last fun question. Actually, pretty much the last fun question. Have you guys been to Hawaii?
I've never been to Hawaii. I've never been, like, anywhere. That's the curse of the Philadelphian. You leave Philly and bad stuff happens. Like, that Always Sunny episode is accurate.
Kelly, what about you? Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
Have not.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, hopefully, well, I'm going to let you guys know we do have conventions out here. Yeah, I'm going to say, I think in 2014, 2015, the Amazing Comic Con took a chance and started to have a comic book convention out here. Because I'm going to be, because I was kind of surprised that, you know, like, we've never had major comic book conventions in the 90s or in the 2000s. Yeah, because this is...
It's kind of surprising.
Yeah, but I'm also wondering too, I'm wondering if it's because part of it is, I'm wondering if it's also the high cost of things of trying to bring things down and so forth. That may play into a role into it, so yeah. But, okay. Well, yeah, well, hopefully if any Hawaii local convention people are listening to this episode, Ivy and Kelly are open to come down, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, please invite me. I would love to go. Y'all have amazing
absolutely.
food. Like, I would love to come and eat a bunch of Hawaiian food, and I guess I can sign books while I'm there also.
Okay. Yes.
I'm gonna last question. Any last words to our listeners? Ivy, I'm gonna start off with you first.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for having us. And then, thank you, folks, for supporting Bountiful Garden. It's been really cool to see the response and see people liking it. And, when you make comics, you do it so people will read them. So it's nice to see people actually reading it.
Kelly, any last words?
Just the same. Thanks for having us. Thanks for listening to the ramblings. And I'll just echo the same sentiment. Thanks to everybody that's checking out the book. And, I hope you continue to enjoy it in its fullest. And, wear masks, get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm,
yeah, I echo that.
Yes.
Be smart.
Because I want to go back to conventions. Yeah. All right. So Ivy and Kelly, I wish you guys all the success for Bountiful Garden. And Ivy and Kelly, mahalo. Thank you in Hawaiian for your time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, thanks for having us.
And then I also want to thank Allison Marie Pon again. She's the marketing director of Mad Cave Studios. Thank you again, Allison, for help setting up this interview and providing me with an advanced copy of Bountiful Garden. Thank you very much. If you are a new reader to comics or a lifelong fan of comics, please check out Bountiful Garden from Mad Cave Studios. The first 2 issues are already out. Issue number 3 comes out on November 17th. The diamond code is SEP211631. And also, too, check out Deadbeats Volume 1 and Deadbeats London Calling Trade. Those are out already in stores already. And also, too, The Secret Garden on 81st Street. Please check that out as well. And I want to thank Drew, the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you for all your hard work behind the scenes. Thank you very much. If you are a new listener, please check out new episodes for Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. Kyle and Drew, they do spec picks on upcoming, upcoming releases. And I want to thank you, the listener. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Aloha.